What's up, everybody? You are tuning into Radio K, and today we are honored to be joined by Ant of Atmosphere.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course. Hailing from the streets of Minneapolis and St. Paul, Ant is one half of the internationally acclaimed rap duo Atmosphere, garnering thousands of listeners both mainstream and underground alike. As the producer behind Atmosphere's signature sound, Ant has played a vital role in shaping independent hip-hop for over 2 decades. His beats, rooted in soul, funk, jazz, and the dusty vinyl samples, have powered a discography that helped define a generation of underground rap. As a founding member of Rhymesayers Entertainment, Ant's influence extends beyond just production. He's helped build the label into a cornerstone of independent music that is still felt to this day. Ant, thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. Nice little intro there. Appreciate it.
Of course. So to start, we're going to take it all the way back. You know, your father was an avid vinyl collector who introduced you to funk, soul, and most importantly, jazz fusion. Mm-hmm. So what impact has Herbie Hancock had on your production, and what are the elements of these genres that still influence you today?
The Herbie Hancock stuff, funny enough, sometimes when I think about that, my dad would play, he played Headhunters a lot, and I remember being just like seeing the record cover. The Headhunters, anybody out there Googles that thing, or if you know it or whatever, you could see like an interesting record cover, and I'm 5 years old, 6, whatever. You see that record cover, and it's like, man, what is that? And then you hear the music, and it's just a trip. Especially there's a instrument called the cuica. I don't know how to say it exactly, but it's the something like that.
Yeah.
And it's just I just be intrigued. I'm like, oh man, listen to that. And it's just funky, right? And you just look on the back and like look at these cats, and so that's my biggest thing. Funny enough with Herbie Hancock though, actually, now that I think about it, that's when I'm a kid, right? I'm not even thinking about music. I'm just intrigued by sound and my dad thinks it's awesome, so it must be awesome. Then fast forward to 1983, Herbie Hancock releases an album called Rocket. Or no, it's called Future Shock. There's a song called Rocket. That song was one of the first to really integrate scratching, and by the great DST, Grand Mixer DST, and then I saw that perform live, and I was just like, I saw a recording of it live. And so Herbie Hancock's just always been influential, always has been, and he has another album cover where I look on the back and I see all the synthesizers he has on there, and I've tried to find them or, somehow figure out how to see what they sound like or whatever, Yeah. Big influence to me.
For sure. And after listening to Future Shock, I'm sure you tried to scratch on your own. And I believe, you had your father's friends come in and watch you. What was that like?
When I've talked about that before was like, I didn't realize it obviously at the time, but it was more like, oh man, my dad actually thinks I'm kind of good at something. I had no idea that he thought I could be anything. As far as I remember him doing is complaining about me scratching records. Mm-hmm. Boy, you sound like a chainsaw in there, that kind of thing. He's like, God, boy, turn it down, all that kind of stuff. So one day, I'm like 14, 15 years old, and he comes in, because he would, at this time in the 85, he's a sergeant at this time, and he has a bunch of privates underneath him, so they're gonna come over and have drinks and laugh at his jokes, and because he's the boss, kind of, you know what I mean? So he just like, hey, want to see my son scratch and cut it up, and and they're young dudes, they're like these guys, these privates, they're like 18, 19 years old. I'm like 15, so I can tell that they know what's up, what I'm about to do. And I do some stuff because I emulated. I could do the DST routine. I could do the Jam Master Jay thing. I could do these things on turntables that not everybody could do at the time. You know what I mean? And that was only because I had access to equipment, like most people didn't, and I just pursued. And I had access to records because my dad was a big record collector. So I just had a little bit of a heads up than your average person, at that age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not only music records, but also comedy ones as well. You
Yeah.
and your father are a fan of Richard Pryor.
Yep, all that stuff, yep. Yeah, the Richard Pryor stuff is more like, you know, he'd play it with his friends, and I was supposed to be in my room playing, and you just hear it, and like, oh dang, and yeah, and I'd just go outside and try to talk like that, So Richard Pryor would end up being influential just to the rhythm of how I spoke as a kid. Like I would hear these records. Most of my friends didn't have these records, and I would play them. My dad wasn't around. I'd sneak the record and play some Richard Pryor and just listen to the two dudes, right? And I'd listen to that over and over and then just get a rhythm of how to talk. And then I would go around to kids at school and tell these nasty jokes and be the man,
Mm-hmm.
Everything's all about impressing people, at least for most artists I know, at some level, it's basically how do I impress everybody and then act like I'm not trying to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've been able to build a community through your vast knowledge of music, comedy at all, especially as a kid. So, like Spawn encouraging Slug to perform in the public eye, was there someone who pushed you to start making music? And what did that early journey into production look like?
No one pushed me. Nope. I just kind of gravitated toward it because in hip hop, with the elements, I tried them all. The graffiti, breakdancing, and I tried to rap once, and they were all fine. But the DJ element is what really grabbed me at the time. I'm 13, 14 years old in the 80s. Hip hop's kind of new. Well, it's brand new to most of America, especially by the time I got involved with it in 82, 83. And I don't know. It's I started DJing, and I would see people trip out on me for knowing how to scratch was impossible to find, and how I even just figured out how to do it was a whole nother, we don't have the time, you know what I mean? But I figured out how to do stuff, and slowly but surely got into drum machines, working with rappers in the 80s, and people were telling me I was good, and wanting to have a place in life and wanting to feel wanted. People telling me I'm good at something, I just kept doing it. Oh, so I'm on the right path. Let me just keep doing it. And so, when I look back at all the stuff I did back then, it's a bunch of nonsense. I made mostly nonsense till about 2008, and then I've been amazing. But no one cares now. Just kidding. But I mean, seriously, like. It's just been small steps the whole way, you know what I mean? And I've been encouraged by many people to, hey, man, oh, yeah, you're kind of good at that, blah, blah, blah. So it just, And the same thing happened when the first time I rapped, I rapped and I tried to record it into a little tape deck. And I accidentally played it in front of my friends, and they laughed. Oh. And they thought, I was like, oh, my God, what do you think? And because I was copying someone else's rhymes too, Uh-huh. And they were just clowning me and made fun of me for the whole summer. And that I never rapped again. Rapped again.
Uh-huh.
As a matter of fact, I didn't ever even talked on a mic until like the late 90s after that. Like seriously. Yeah.
Yeah. As the kid of somebody that's in the military, you had to move around a lot. So how would you kind of reestablish yourself in these different areas? I believe you moved from, California to Oklahoma to Texas even. So what was that like?
Yeah, most of that happened before I was 15, technically, So like when you're a kid, it's who knows how you get through it. But the one thing growing up in the military, everybody else is in a similar boat, right? They're going through the same thing. They're moving every 3 to 4 years too, or sometimes less. There's some places I was only in for like a year, So, but yeah, I did a lot of time, and my earliest days were Texas and Oklahoma. But then I went to Germany, and then I went to California, then to Minnesota because my mom and dad are originally from here, and then back to back to Germany, and then by then I was like 13 after all that, and then we moved. I went to New York for a little while, just a few months, and then went to Minnesota again I did one school year in Minnesota in 83, 82, and then so much. And then I went to Colorado for my high school years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was just like, and just always being the new person, you know, you just act cooler than you are. You know, at least that's what I would do. Just try to act cool, like nothing fazed me.
Mm-hmm.
Be scared as hell, you know, and just act tougher than I am. I still do all these tricks today. And matter of fact, I'm not tough or nothing. And if you see my face like all scrunched up, like it's light. I'm sensitive to light.
We gotta dim the lights. Or
no, it's good. I'm glad I at least got to explain it. Like I have like cataracts and stuff, so it's kind of like people are always like, "Oh man, you look so mean and unapproachable and mean." And no, I'm quiet, and light bothers my eyes. That's all it is.
There you go.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
No, and moving back and forth, I'm sure you got to experience and hear all these regional sounds. So, what are some of your favorites? And has there been anything from these places that you moved back and forth from that you've kind of put into your own production?
I couldn't say that. No, all my sound stuff is all from. It starts from my childhood. Like all of the things I chase, I've always chased a certain kind of sound, like super into vocoder since the very first time I heard it in the early 80s or as a kid, you know what I mean? Like hearing certain kind of scratch sounds, hearing, like I was talking about the quicker thing, that sound, all these kind of things, and certain synth sounds I was talking about, I just started chasing. And, spaghetti Western stuff, because I was big on that as a kid. So all these are the sounds that I've been after and still am attracted to this day. Yeah. So not necessarily regionally,
Yeah. Among that collection of sounds, let's also kind of circle back to your collection of records, and among your growing collection of multi-platinum selling, albums.
Oh, I don't have no multi-platinum records.
No. Other people.
Oh, yeah.
No.
I just had to say that.
No, you're good.
I wish.
You're good.
Yeah,
Here,
yeah.
I'll just snap that one back in.
No. I think it's good to have like little real dialogue, like,
Okay.
I think this is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and your dollar bin finds, because I also know that you are big into the dollar bins at record stores.
Yeah.
Knights of the Turntables Techno Scratch acts as one of your most prized possessions.
Mm-hmm.
So what makes this record so impactful to your production? And are there any others you've consistently drawn inspiration from throughout your career?
Well, that one, once again, like it's all childhood stuff. So when I bought that, I didn't even know what it was. I just saw the cover. There was like a little sticker on it, and there was a guy touching a turntable. It was pretty simple, And I had no idea what it was, and I bought it. And matter of fact, I was just passing through Minnesota at the time, 84. I was talking about when I was living here basically for almost a year. Must have been sixth grade or something like that, I don't remember. And there was a record store next door to First Ave, and it was, I can't remember the name of it. Was it Northern Lights? Maybe. But anyway, it was and they were the only spot I knew of that had 12 inches like that. And I remember specifically, I bought that and Egyptian Lover. I knew what the Egypt was, because I was like the popular song at school, you know what I mean? So that was an easy buy. And I just couldn't believe I found it, because at the time, singles were like, where do you get those? You don't even, major record stores at the time that were near where I was they just dedicated toward albums. So anyway, when I got that single and I played it for the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, this is blowing my mind. And I didn't know what they were doing, but I soon learned that all their scratches are going through effects and stuff. I didn't know what reverb and delays were. I didn't even know what that stuff was. And they were doing all that over just drum machines, and that's it. And it seemed like I can't do that, but I might be able to. You know what I mean? Kind of. That's where that record spawned me for at the beginning. Like, oh, started seeing the light. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Northern Lights, that hip hop record store owned by Timothy Wilson, is such an important piece of hip hop culture.
Yeah. The store that was next door to First Ave
I see.
was different.
Okay.
I don't know if he was related to that or not, but that was downtown Minneapolis. I know the Northern Lights he has is in St. Paul, I believe, right?
Yeah, St. Paul.
Yeah, and he's had that for forever.
Mm-hmm.
And but the one I can't remember the name of it, but it was next door to First Ave. Excuse me.
No, yeah. I mean, on the topic of urban lights, gosh, I love going to that record store, and it's really interesting to go in and just hear all these stories about Minneapolis and, you know, rap in the early 2000s and all this memorabilia in the background, I guess. So
Yeah.
how was it like to be in the scene when Minneapolis was the place to be for hip hop?
My relationship, it comes from a different place, you know. When I first moved here, I felt like there wasn't a technical, like not a scene, and there was people doing it. Don't get me wrong with that. But when I moved here in 90 actually, I'd been making demos in the 80s, right, in Colorado. So when I came here, it was just another stepping stone to I want to make records. That's all I've ever cared about. You know, I want to make records. How do I do it? And it was like impossible to figure out how to do. And so to me, it's just one step after another, meeting people, just getting involved with people that make music and care about it the same way I do. That's one step. And then having the drive, finding the people to have the drive to continue, because that's another step, you know. There's a lot of steps that get involved with all this. So by time a scene developed here as far as people rapping and things like that, and we were involved in that, but there's a lot of different people involved with that. It didn't matter to me that much, you know, especially at the time. I just want to make records, you know, and I'm still like that to this day. I just want to make records. I'm so selfish with that, you know. It's my dream, and it's been my dream since I'm 5 years old. So, you know, I'm almost 55 years old now, 50 years almost of dreaming of this, and I'm living it. So all the scene stuff was just byproducts of something that's happening around me. And now that it would come and go in waves. I would literally watch people join up for a couple years, make some music, chase their dream for a couple years, and then they're gone. They're off doing something else, you know. So I've watched so much come and go from this, you know, and there's nothing wrong with any of it. It just so happens I've just stuck forever. Yeah. So I did notice one thing. I would be proud of this town once I started touring, and I would go to other cities and realize, oh, y'all don't have something every night. Mm-hmm. There used to be literally, especially in the early 2000s, there was something every night. Rap battles, and you could see some people playing. You'd see the same bands like once a week sometimes, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I'm pretty sure at one point or another, like, Atmosphere like played a couple times a month, you know what I mean, somewhere, you know. And so did half everybody else, you know. So, yeah.
You know, and before this, we were talking about venues that don't exist anymore, you know, went out of business through time. So what were some of those spots that you circled that aren't really around?
Man, I can't remember names of places, but when in the early 2000s or late 90s, 2000s, I remember Dinky Towner was a big one in the Loring Pasta Bar. They seem to have events at least 2-3 times a week, it seemed like. You know, legitimate rap battles and just nights of people playing, you know, and people coming into town. I remember those two being something. And then there was other places too, and like there was the spot down the street here. Dang. You know, not obviously Red Sea, but then there was a couple of other spots in that area down here. I don't remember any names of anything.
No,
I'm a blank. But anyway, yeah. Things come and go, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, Atmosphere has been able to stay relevant and stay within the scene and influential in hip hop for decades, you know, releasing countless studio projects. So, how do you continue to create fresh and innovative music while still holding onto that foundational sound and spirit of 90s hip hop?
It's just who I am, I guess. I just still love it the same, you know. I think that's what it is, and you know, ever since, maybe if I didn't have the people around me that I do, maybe my sound would have changed a whole dramatic way. Maybe I don't do it as often, you know. You never know, you know. But now I'm realizing, oh, this community and of rhymesayers and the things I've been involved with, and the people I work with so closely, I think that's what's the glue is keeping our sound and our way. You know what I mean? I think it's keeping it all moving.
Yeah.
You know, so it's really hard to say, you know, but, and, you know, hip hop is just strange too, because like, what is it, you know, 50 some years old, but like, it changes so much, and it's a youth thing, but you know, we're old guys doing this stuff, and we embrace that part. So we've embraced all of our, you know what I mean? Like we're not trying to be 20-year-olds, you know what I mean? So I think that plays a part of keeping us moving. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, then what do you make of the modern era of hip hop, it being so accessible? You know, what do you think about that?
There's parts of it I love, you know. There's some things about it I love, and sometimes I'm like, these people nowadays are so creative, and there's so many different. I get jealous of all the different styles there are now. Like you have, and anything's accepted. You know, you can have the raunchiest stuff to the sweet stuff to there's so many things now, and it's all seems to be accepted by somewhere. I felt like when we were coming up, you know, there was like two lanes. Either you were dork or you were mean, you know, or something, you know what I mean? Like, and I think we kind of tried to mix in dork and mean, you know what I mean? Like we tried to be in the middle. Yeah. Yeah,
which, you know, trying to appeal to, like, I guess not appeal, but trying to kind of fit in that middle between the dorky backpackers and the mean, you know, people. Which side kind of accepted you more, or was it sort of equal? Like, what was that like?
It seemed like, you know, that's one thing about hip hop that's always kind of bothered me a little bit, is that sometimes there's a trend to it, right? So the backpack that thing probably lasted 5 years. It became a joke, and I think to this day maybe some people can joke on it, but it was probably a thing for 5 years. Just like almost all these little weird trends, you know, and young people stuff, you know. Young people just come in and do some stuff, and then off to the next thing once those people become adults and get real jobs, you know? And then there's people like me left hanging like, all right, what's next? Okay, triple time hi-hats? Okay, what's next? You know what I mean? Filtered bass lines? Okay, you know what I mean? Scratch hooks? What's next? You know, all this time, you know? I've tried to avoid all those trappings, you know? I just tried to just do what I think is original, you know what I mean? Of course, I'm influenced by all those things, and I'm not mad at any of that stuff. Yeah. I lost my train of thought, but I love it though. Yeah, I do. I love where things are at in some ways right now.
Yeah, And you know, earlier you were talking about there's just a community for all sorts of genres and styles of rap. You know, but has there been one in particular that you've just been like caught off guard by, you know, like more than others? You've been like, wow, this one's really great, this one I'm gonna listen to the most. Like, I don't know, what is that for you?
Caught off guard, I guess I was kind of I would be surprised sometimes by how big certain things get. I've been surprised by how big we've gotten in some ways, and then sometimes I'm like, man, why am I still check to check? You know what I mean? Like, I can look at that at me, or I can look at something like whatever, or like something like, let's say the biggest thing, like Drake or something, and like, who likes that? You know what I mean? But billions of people do. So it's like, oh, okay, it's interesting, and I see the value. I have definitely hit the stage of life where I do see the value in all things, the most poppiest stuff to the grimiest stuff, to the something that was just done. Everything about it is wrong. I can see the value in all of it now, way better than I could, in my 30s or 20s or 30s. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's less of my identity to have a stamp like, oh, this is hip hop. No, I don't know what's hip hop. You know what I mean? And that I just know what I feel, and I can appreciate anybody chasing their dream.
Yeah. What was that like, having this kind of image of hip hop and this philosophy towards anything goes, and interacting with like the gatekeepers, in the 90s and the 2000s?
Man, I never really. The gatekeeper word is just kind of new to me anyway, so I never. I can't. I'm trying to figure out how to apply it to the 90s, But back then it was more like, well, let's go further back, all right? Let's say in the 80s, right? When I first really got into this, you wouldn't hear rap anywhere. Literally nowhere. I would go to a record store and buy, oh, that looks like rap. I guess I'm buying that, and I would be, because I'm a DJ, blah, blah, blah. And so out of all my friends, I had the most records, and because I would just have passion about it, and I would hit everybody to all the new stuff, in some ways, you know what I mean? So there's that big gatekeep thing until they realized, oh, wait a minute, there's money over yonder. Let's go exploit it or whatever. Once they stopped once they started paying attention to hip hop and rap or whatever, and then it started morphing into pop rap more a little bit, and then the gangster stuff, and then all these other genres start coming about. But when I first started, it was DJing and MCing. That's it. You know what I mean? And then it started morphing into these other things, which I love it all. I love the pop stuff and the gangster stuff equally, And then the 90s came, and then I started realizing, especially here in Minnesota too, like there wouldn't be any rap shows. Nobody was playing, and there was only a handful of rap groups anyway. I think Micronauts were one of the main ones, and there was a couple other ones like IRM and stuff like that they would have certain things happening here and there. I don't know the full history of Minnesota hip hop, and that sort of I'm not the gospel on it. But there was a lot of different people trying to do stuff, and clubs weren't letting people play. There was no access. Every now and then somebody big would come through. I remember specifically like Ice-T came through in the early 90s and played at First Ave. I went to that show. And, things like that, but it wasn't often. Maybe a few times a year, maybe some rap stuff would come through. And because of my travels, I knew Minnesota, shoot, that's better than Colorado had. You know what I mean? Even though when I was in Denver, Colorado, I seen some interesting stuff. Like I saw Run DMC and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, it's just been slowly, just like, so when I think about gatekeeping, I just think about until these venues start seeing real money involved, doors would open for shows, and I kind of look at it more like that, or record labels and things like that, And then they would start putting their 2 cents in it and saying, well, okay, well, until something proves that it works, like pop rap, oh, that works, then they get more of it. The gangster rap thing, there was gangster rap stuff going on, but once NWA hit and went platinum out of nowhere, then they were like, oh, we got to get more of that. You know what I mean? So it's just like, yeah, it's just, until something makes money,
Yeah.
That's when it starts getting messy,
And, despite how hard it must have been to kind of blow up in a city that people may have found difficult, getting a show at, being hip hop artists, today Atmosphere has been built an extensive discography, including 13 studio albums, 10 EPs, 2 compilation albums. And despite all this experience under your belt, you've emphasized how much you continue to learn, on the road, continually. So what are some things you've learned recently on tour or otherwise that surprised you even this deep into your career?
Oh man. Learning nowadays? Well, there's always something, there's always, I guess I am learning that I think I'm getting over the idea of playing little places with only 200 people in them. I think that may have run its course.
Yeah.
But I'll still do it because I'm a knucklehead, But, that's one thing that's interesting about us, though. We'll play some weird small show of just a few hundred people, literally, and then a week later we're playing in front of thousands of people somewhere, So it's just, we're strange, I think. Or maybe it's more normal than I know about. But I don't think that answers your question. I don't think I know how to,
Yeah.
I just know when I travel this country, though, it's just like it's constantly changing. So these cities are changing, and it's just age, you know what I mean? Like when you're, I used to hear my folks talk about it, and people just complaining about, oh man, that building used to be something else and whatever, and that type of stuff. And I never wanted to be that guy, but I'm starting to be that guy, and I'm starting to be that guy in other cities. Like I go to these places, because I go to the same clubs for 20 years, literally, And so you get to know once a year, you go to the wherever, and you're like, oh man, this doesn't, the cast of characters are different even, I don't know. Yeah. So everything's constantly learning,
Yeah.
evolving. And then that's another thing too. I've completely, from what I started touring 20 years ago and to who I am now, is 2 completely different human beings. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't even want to be in the same room with that guy. You know what I mean? And there's something good about that. I've gained so much from, but that's just age. I think everybody goes through that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just touring,
And kind of circling back to your production, you've mentioned that you still own and use your ASR-10.
Yeah.
A piece of gear that you've had since the early 90s. And what is it about this piece of equipment that you've kept it central to your process, all these years? And what type of equipment have you experimented with recently?
Well, I think the essence of me is I'm a lazy man, and I don't like to learn new stuff. So there's that. And then the things I have learned and the new equipment that has come out is interesting, and it does its thing. But there's something about where I come from, that sound, that I just like. And I know how to do it, and I still like the sound. But I do like to add things more than I did, let's say, when in the 90s, obviously. Like, I love working with musicians now, and I've been doing that for a long time, too. That's another thing, too. I've been doing this so long that things that some people's whole careers, I've been doing certain things, you know what I mean? Like using musicians since '08 that's a long time, kind of, But before that, it's just sampling records. And I still sample records, obviously. That's still my main thing. And I still like getting a weird little new synthesizer and checking out the sounds. And yeah.
Yeah. Have you been able to, officially complete this Herbie Hancock synthesizer collection?
No. I'm not even close. And it's not even, of course I want to, but the cost, I just can't justify it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do have friends that do have close to that, or even better now. You know what I mean? So I just go to their place and record stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But my record collection, though, is what I envisioned it. I did that. I just not the synthesizer part, though. But my synthesizer collection is something too compared to like, you know, average person, I think. You know?
Yeah. No, I bet.
Yeah.
And beyond your work behind the wheels of steel,
Mm-hmm.
you're also one of the co-founders of Rhymesayers Entertainment,
Mm-hmm.
an independent record label that's become a cornerstone of underground hip hop. It really goes with under introduction. Anybody that knows about underground hip hop knows about Rhymesayers, especially here in Minneapolis. So, can you take us back to its early days? Kind of give us a brief overview. What sparked the idea of the label, and what were those first steps like? Bringing this label to life.
Small steps, and this is Sadiq's brainchild. He is the ringleader of the whole idea from the beginning, and it's all out of necessity. Being from Minnesota, and this is the '95-ish era, and he's like, I'd been sending out demos for years, and they're not good, so I understand why they didn't work out, but I thought they were good at the time. So you're getting nowhere fast asking New York and LA, hey, sign these dorks from Minnesota. You know what I mean? We're going to make you lots of money.
Mm-hmm.
That's, you get a lot of doors shut. That's not gatekeeping. That's smart business by New York,
Yeah.
But anyway, so Sadiq's like, let's just do it ourselves. Other people had been doing it, like a lot of cats from all over the place, and even like Oakland and Too Short and all that kind of stuff was selling tapes out of their trunks. This is an old thing that's been happening in hip hop forever, right? And Sadiq just had the nerve to be like, why can't we do it here? And it's all out of necessity. And you got to remember, the only thing I care about is making records. So you're telling me you're going to help me make a record, and you believe in my sound? You are now my best friend. You know what I mean? Like, It's kind of, like the Step Brothers kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we all are. Same with like Slug, and Beyond and everything. And Beyond had it was the first record I did, and the first release off of Rhymesayers. And me and him were doing things since like '93 or so. But yeah, that's how all that started. It was pretty basic, and desperation, and we need to do this ourselves because nobody else is even interested in this at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what that was, in small steps. And my contribution to Rhymesayers is saying, yes, I would love to make records for you. That's all I did. Mm-hmm. And I just never accepted money, for the first 10 years or something.
Mm-hmm.
We'd keep it together. Let's build something and make it stronger, and let's put out other artists and stuff like that. And I'm not trying to sit here and say that I believed in other artists, but Sadiq did. And I'm like, you do, so I do,
Yeah.
That's what that's all about.
Yeah.
And it's remained that way for 30 years.
Yeah. It's like still been able to have a presence within the hip hop scene.
Yeah.
And, independent record labels, have still, had this really big appeal. You have Rhymesayers, you have Stone's Throw, and there's a really big, draw to it,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see why, you know what I mean? Like, people can relate to the idea of just starting something on their own from nothing, literally starting from nothing, It's appealing to people because it can be done. It's just not going to happen overnight. Hence the 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any kind of like unsung heroes of Rhymesayers? Somebody that like are people that, you feel like deserve a little bit more like attention, because of all their contributions to the label?
All of them. Yeah, all of them at some level. It's just, even when we first started, before Rhymesayers, Rhymesayers kind of started right away, but there was this group of people called Headshots. And there's Abstract Pack and Atmosphere, and then Beyond. And then there was Full Circle and Los Nativos, and all these people were talented. And at the time, at especially, let's say, 96 or something, obviously some were shining through more than others, but they all were dope and all equally had something to give and could have been something, shoulda, woulda, all these kinds of things, right? And, and nothing changed from then all the way till now. Even like someone like, let's say, Saw Rock, you know, she's dope as hell. You know, it's, you know, I don't think it gets the same recognition as it should, you know?
Yeah.
I am dope as hell. I don't get all the recognition. I'm just kidding.
Hey,
you know what I mean?
you can say you're dope as
Yeah. I'm
right
just
there with
saying.
you.
I'm just, you know what I mean? It's just like, that just goes with the territory of art, you know?
Yeah.
Like, just comes with it, you know? All the thing, you know, there's lots of people that have been with us over the years, and they didn't get what they deserved, really, out of, but that's life too.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
You know, later Rhyme Series created, you know, the one and only Soundset Music Festival,
Mm-hmm.
an event that grew into one of the largest hip hop festivals in the country, in my opinion.
Yeah. Rap, I think hip hop
rap,
festival.
hip-hop.
Yeah.
Thousands of attendees, and you know, would come from across the country, around the world even, to attend, and it even hosted legends like Erykah Badu, Kendrick Lamar, De La Soul, Wu-Tang Clan, Nas, and Tyler, the Creator, you know, of course, and many more as well. So, looking back, you know, are there any Soundset moments that stand out to you, you know, as particularly special? And can we expect a Soundset revival someday?
Well, this, as far as a moment, there's lots of different kinds of moments that were great. But for the most part, you know, Soundset to me was just more of a headache. It was just like, oh man, we got to play in front of all these people. You know, my phone is ringing off the hook between family and friends and other artists. They think I've got all this carte blanche I have, and everybody thinks I'm rich, and so that's a hassle, you know, and it's just stupid. And then you play at the end, and you know, everybody's trying to get to their car early, so you see this exodus of people leaving while you're on stage. It sucks. And I've been sitting here, you know, dealing with this for like, I know this show is coming every year, and I know we're going to be the basic headliner every year. And you know, we still, especially at the beginning of that stuff, we were touring all the time. You know, like, we still tour a lot, you know, but we were doing 4 or 5 months a year, it felt like back then. Now we cut it back and we do like 3 months a year, you know, and it's still like, gosh. But yeah, so I do have some things you know, there was this one time Tech Nine was playing, and I love Tech Nine, but I had one of my buddies, you know, doesn't know rap at all, like just hanging around with me. Like, I used to be a heavy drinker, and I hang around my drinking friends, you know. And one of my buddies was with me. He doesn't even listen to rap, really. He has no idea. But he's backstage, and Tech Nine's getting backstage, you know, and he's in the bathroom getting some makeup on, getting his stuff together, you know, getting ready to do his thing. And my buddy comes in there, and he's an older dork, you know, Minnesota dork guy.
Yeah.
And he goes, I take it you're an artist.
Okay.
The
one and only Tech Nine.
Yeah. Tech Nine was like,
who are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm here to play, aren't I?
Yeah, it was just funny to me. And maybe that's not, I don't know. To me, that's the funniest thing in the world. But so things like that. And then there was the year with the tornado or whatever, people freaking out about that. All kinds of things like that I remember. But, you know, I'm glad we don't have to worry about it every year. And I also, you know, I used to get kind of mad at it because then Rhyme Series would focus on it for 6 months out of a year rather than my records. I want to make records. I want my records heard.
Yeah.
I got a whole record label that's only caring about their baby, the Soundset thing. You know what I mean? So I'm a little more like, oh man, who cares about a festival? I see festivals everywhere. Who cares? You know what I mean? And that's just my selfish part, you know. And it did wonders for us, and it did amazing things for us, and I'm proud of those guys for doing what they did, because it was amazing what they did. And I hope they don't do it again. But I am not in control of that. And if they ask me, I would say, don't do it. It's not worth it. You know, that's me. Yeah. But I'll play it.
Yeah. Hey, you'll be there.
I'll be there.
Did you know if it took any convincing to get these incredibly large acts to get?
It's amazing what money will do for anything.
That's true.
You throw money at somebody, you'll be surprised what they'll do.
Yeah.
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 Because just like looking back, had all these
Yeah, but I'll give it. That's the brainchild. That's another one of Sadiq's brilliance too. He caught most of those names that you mentioned before they were big. Kendrick Lamar, he wasn't anything yet. Well, he was bubbling. He was getting there. He was getting signed by Dre. All these kinds of things were happening. So the first 10 years, or 7, 8 years, I think, were the homie hookup deals he was getting, and then getting people before they blew up, right before, and so then I guess what's the word, cachet of 7 years of doing the festival and having people, partnering up, gives you more access to money to blow on big people that are super famous, and then so when it's all said and done, there's not a lot of money left necessarily, because you're getting these bigger names. And then it just starts, just like anything else, it runs its course,
Yeah.
And then 2020 happened and, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just researching, I was looking at those recap videos, and it was really interesting to see these artists that, are, again, big names right now, especially SZA. SZA's on tour with Kendrick Lamar as we speak right now. Was there any artists that you were like, yeah, they're gonna blow up. They got this. Like, I don't know how they don't have a bajillion listeners right now, and they did blowing up.
Oh yeah, Kendrick was one of them at the time. I think. I mean, he was right, because I was like, oh my God, he's amazing. And I think Dr. Dre had just said something about him. You know what I mean? So that was one of the But I've never been the fortune teller type. I could never tell what's going to be the next big thing. If that was the case, I'd own an island, you know what I mean? I've never been able to tell what the next big thing was, it's impossible for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always even pick out the wrong songs that are going to be big, you know what I mean? I always think, oh, let's make a video for this. Everybody's going to love it. Crickets, you know what I mean? My biggest song is something that we just kind of threw away.
Yeah.
Literally, you know what I mean? So I'm not good with that stuff.
Yeah. Has there ever been like a song that, like, it's particularly big now, that Slug was like, no, you got to put this on. This is like going to be amazing. People are going to love this.
That Slug pushed, like he thought would be something and it was something?
Yeah.
I'm sure there is, but I think we'd usually agree on something. Maybe something in the beginning back in the day, and I don't remember, so I don't know. But I don't think either one of us saw Sunshine being our biggest song. We both are in agreement, agree with that. We never would have thought that would be the song that defines us, you know what I mean? And that's another one of those things that you can never dictate that. You can never tell what's going to be what people want.
Yeah. And, throughout the years, not only did, head sounds that people be able to establish and cultivate these relationships with other people, you did too. You're able to build connections with legendary artists, such as A$AP Rock and the late MF Doom. So what was your relationship with MF Doom like, and can you take us behind the scenes of the creation of your remix of Hoe Cakes that was featured in the 20th anniversary re-release of Food?
No, I didn't have a relationship with Doom like that. That's Sadiq's relationship. Matter of fact, the one time he played a few things I played at, and one time he played and he just lip synced, and I just was like, that's a no.
Yeah.
That's just how I saw it at the time. So I didn't think much of it. You know what I mean? He's a prime example. I never would have thought he was going to be as big as he is. Like, he's always dope. See, I don't know. See, that's why I don't even belong in this business, because I know he was. Yeah, he's dope. I didn't know he was going to be like, the the biggest thing kind of in underground ever, kind of. Thank God it's him. You know what I mean? Everything works out, perfectly. But I didn't see that at the time, and when I did the remix, it was an interesting thing to do, because I gave him something, and he has a song where there's a sample on there. It goes super. It's from a song called it's a supersonic thing, and I was like, oh, I'm doing a remix, so I'm gonna swap that out, and I'm gonna put super some other different thing, And I'm like, oh, and I'm gonna move a couple of his words back so they're more on time, more on beat. I'm just gonna put this thing and make it more polished version. And then he liked the beat and he liked everything, but he didn't like me adjusting anything to do with the words. So like he's like, no, don't do that to my words. And he put the super back in.
Yeah.
And that was the only part that I was like, are you sure, man? Come on, man. You know? Yeah. And it was done in a very old school way when he sent me the remix, or the original joint had an acapella, and it came in the mail. It was an acapella, but only if you put the speaker to the left. You know what I mean? So he was on the track, but if you go to the left, you get the acapella. If you go to the right, it's only the beat.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how it was done.
Nice.
So I swapped out the beat, and I made 2 different beats for it actually. And he picked the right one for sure. Yeah.
So were able, like, in the booth with him, like, in the same...
No. This was literally a remix. He gave me the acapella to the song that I remixed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But still, incredible achievement, you know, to be on the late MF Doom's album in any capacity. You know?
Yeah.
You know, and aside from the projects you've been featured on, you also just released a project of your own called Collection of Sounds Volume 4 back in early April through Rhymesayers. So looking back on the volumes 1 through 4, do you approach instrumental albums differently than you do when producing with Slug?
Yeah, everything's a little different. Well, like doing this thing myself, this instrumental thing, was more like stuff that I just had over the years. You know what I mean? It was a whole different process than what I do at Slug. You know, but the essence of an order and all that, and just that's just who I am. It just so happens that me and Slug agree, and we're both the same on that. So that just works easily. So I just apply the same thing I do at any record to that with the instrumental stuff. Yeah. And it was like, oh, what can I show off from back in the day that no one cared about or didn't get out, you know? Or what's new that I have that I don't know who to give this to, or you know what I mean? That type of thing. Self-indulgent, as per usual with me.
Yeah. And, you know, I would also like to focus on the track titled Just Another 3 a.m., one of my favorite track off the album.
Right on.
You know, and it really reminds me of this, you know, Ennio Morricone's The Thing original soundtrack. And, you know, other, you know, videos that you've done with, you know, organizations or record stores. You've, you know, mentioned the influence of film, you know, in particular The Thing in this case, I guess, for me.
Yeah.
So can you talk about how other mediums like film and comedy have influenced your production?
Yeah, I think there's nothing like movies that have influenced my sound and what I do from when I was a kid. You know, everything stems from when I was a child. Well, all of our lives do, right? Everything that we do is, you find out, if you go to enough therapy, you'll find out that your dumb ass is doing all this stuff because you did something when you were 7. You know what I mean? It keeps going to something your dad did or whatever. Same story over and over. But when I was a kid, you know, spaghetti westerns were kind of on TV a lot, like Good, Bad, and the Ugly, and that was spaghetti western sound, and I would have those sounds in my head all the time, and so that's been the biggest influence, kind of that stuff, and then my dad's records, watching him play stuff and watching him trip out and talk about it, and then trying to figure out a way to be connected to him. How do I connect to this guy, you know? He's old school dude, you know, all them old school guys, they don't talk, you know what I mean? They're not talking to kids, you know, so like, how do I connect to my dad, you know? This is a big psychological thing.
Yeah.
And then these movies that I want to be like these guys. I want to be like Clint Eastwood, you know what I mean? Like, I walk around with theme music, you know what I mean? To this day, when I walk around, can't tell me nothing. I have a soundtrack going on, you know. And so then when like the Thing, Ennio Morricone, and John Carpenter. Them two, I just love everything they do. So their music, it was easy. It's easy, the emotion I hear in this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it makes me feel things, and I do my best to apply that kind of sensibility to my music. In my head, I'm like, man, I just hope there's some little kid sitting around, his dad's playing my stuff and fantasizing about what they're gonna do or what they could make.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Have there been any local acts or local, not only band members, rappers, but just artists, within the Twin Cities that have reached out directly to you for any sort of guidance?
Yeah, there's definitely been people here and there, but guidance. I don't know if that's maybe there's been things, and I've known so many people here that have done all kinds of stuff. So yeah, but yeah, and hip hop is it's a strange or it used to be like a strange outdo each other kind of a thing. Everybody's in a race to be better than the next, or you know what I mean. So there was so much of that in my 20s and 30s, that I'm drawing a blank on the faces and times are starting to blur together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you kind of approach those situations when somebody's trying to, get support or guidance or anything like that? Are you just like, yeah, sure, or like, come to my studio, or no, like, figure it out on your own?
No, I'll talk to anybody. Yeah, if I seen somebody and they really ask me what, I'll talk.
Yeah.
I prefer in face, not at my house, but in face to face. Matter of fact, at the grocery store the other day, somebody came up and was like, "Hey man, hey, it's like, all right, I'll give you whatever. If I have the time, I'll give you whatever I got, because to me it's almost like I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, I'm like helping the community. I don't know if that, I can't say that. I'm a selfish kind of guy with my music, but I do like to tell stories about where I'm from and how it might be able to apply to what you're doing. If there's any little thing I can tell you on how to get to where you're going, I'd be so proud of that. I know when I was trying to make it in this thing, whatever that means, it would be so far and few that I would ever be able to meet anybody that could tell me anything, because nobody was getting anywhere, and I would meet some older guys and they would show me a couple things or tell me a couple things, but man, I could have used some better guidance, so I don't any artist ever stops me for anything, but things have changed so much too. I might not be able to help you, but if you're looking for an interesting little story or something, I got you all day.
Yeah.
Especially without the camera on me. I could talk some real
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Really
No.
appreciate you coming in, sharing a little bit about yourself, your story.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what the fans could look forward to in the future?
I mean, if for any reason you're looking forward to more music from me, I'm going to be doing that until the wheels fall off. That's, from whatever I can get my hands on, whatever I can do. I always have something in my mind. I'm always working on something, and I'm still chasing my dream.
Sweet. All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It means the world. Thank you.